If we now go back to our O1 R mock in section fundamentals, what I did was I downloaded the source code for that mock, and basically to keep it static so that I can reference the line numbers in case they've changed, we have the actual file here. So if we go into mock the source code here, we can see, for example, what is a spec. So if we go to line 580 and we come into our code, do Control G 580, we can see that we have the function here, mock add spec. Most of them are in the non-callable mock. We'll see later that when it comes to the class mock, it actually really inherits from these. And this is where most of the information is. But you can see to add a spec to a mock, only attributes on the spec can be fetched as attributes from the mock. What that's really saying is that because mock's so malleable, that we could easily add methods and properties and tests would pass. If we set a spec to a class or to an object, it will define what shape that mock can take. And if the mock tries to have an attribute that's not present in the underlying class, it will give us an error. Assert not called, assert called. You see, we have these in the mock. So if we come back into here and do Control G and Control V, we can see these functions, assert not called, expect to have been called. We just did this in our test 002 where we had our own kind of counter. This is where all these assert not called, assert called once, assert called with. Whenever we run these asserts in our tests, these are the functions that are being used. Again, if we go to line 1322, we can see that mock is actually inheritable. Inherits from callable mixin and the non-callable. So when we come in here and go into, when we come into here and type Control G, Control V, we can see that to trace what actually is happening in mock, we're having these inherited classes. And there's quite a bit of definition about what is a spec set, a side effect, return value, because sometimes you see mock.return value, it gets set. We're not going to go into all of these, but if you want to understand, how these are working, this is where all these functions are. Coming back into here, start and stop. There are three ways, and a very good video to find that is in links here. This one here, 3 ways to mock. There's a very good video. Let's just open that up. It's this one here. It goes through the 3 ways of context manager, inline, and one other. I'll just put the link to it so you can go there. But if we come back to that, this start and stop is on one line 722. So if we come into our mock source code and do Control G, Control V, we can see that though the start and the stop function for the inline is listed down here and how that works. Patch itself is on 1486. So we start to see the function patch and what it does, and there's lots of comments about what it can actually be done. And if you keep scrolling down, that's it. That's kind of, I think, most of it. Keep coming down. What is a magic mock? And that's really for the dunder methods in short. The magic mock, in fact, what I do is if I actually take these comments out here, it's easier to see. It's a subclass with default implementation of most of the magic methods. And it explains how it works. So if you want to find a little bit more about magic mocks, that's where you can find out. Auto spec, that's on 28. You come in here, Control G, Control V. Creating an auto spec, what does this do? Let's just quickly see. It uses another object as a spec, and therefore if you use on your mock any attribute that's not in the spec object, it will come back with an error, and therefore it defines the shape of mock, because mock's so kind of malleable that it'll be easy to add methods to make tests pass, but they shouldn't actually be there. Using the create auto spec or spec will basically limit what we can actually do and therefore keeps our tests more accurate. And mock open for file, we'll see an example of that later down, how we can use that. But again, if we come down here, mock open, here's the example of the mock open. To create a mock to replace the use of open. So when you want to run tests, we'll see that in some of our examples. But this is just showing you that if we go into the source file, we can actually begin to see what all these things are. So it's not just some magic invocations. So the two files, that one there for the references, and I downloaded the copy so that these two match up. Obviously it may change in the GitHub, but you've got the source code as of the recording.